about that, but I think our emphasis right now is probably to at least start with starting the existing programs earlier than what we have now in the 8th grade. David?
Just to add to that, and again, that your point is well taken. We think that if we begin a program and give kids in the students in the 6th and 7th grade more choices as opposed to just French and Spanish, then you have a critical mass as they move into the full study, whether it's in the 8th grade or in their high school. Then we're going to be compelled to continue providing those additional choices. So we want to start at the ground level, expand the base more than just the French and Spanish, which then will lead to building a program over a period of years.
I can see Mr. Jervie ready to speak.
Steve, go ahead.
I'm just going to say quickly that, as the enrollment at the high school increases, and we have to provide courses to satisfy, just giving every one of them a class, it increases the opportunity to provide new programs. And I think at least one more world language is
Thanks,
And I
Steve.
have one more.
Anybody else want to respond to the foreign language question?
I could just say that the Director of Curriculum and I had a discussion Monday, actually, about the possibilities of German and Latin at the high school. But again, going back to the point that Dr. Troughton made, that the feeder program is really, we believe, the place to start. But certainly the option of introducing new languages at the high school is an option that's very open.
And I'll just chime in that there's a vehicle in place for the long-term planning now. We've started, I mentioned the curriculum councils earlier, and I was at school committee recently speaking about them. And the objective this spring for that group is to do a needs assessment and to chart out a 5-year plan of where we want to go. So that's the forum where we're going to be bringing John's suggestions and trying to investigate if we do get the addition of the 6th and 7th grade program, how this is going to impact the high school and where we could bring that program of studies.
Great, thank you. I have one more.
Yep.
And I guess this, I'll piggyback on what one of the questions Mrs. Dingman asked, and my question was going to be, as you develop budgets for '05 and '06 in your multi-year plan, are there any monies targeted at any aspect of the batch renovation and relocation, for example, buses, travel expenses, et cetera? And I think you've answered the question with a yes, and I guess I just expand upon that in asking you that as you do that, and you find need to do that, that you separate those expenses maybe into a separate listing of a budget so that it can be seen quite clearly.
Yeah. We've talked about that, in fact. That's an idea that's already come up, and believe me, we are going to identify very clearly all the expenses associated with the relocation.
For example,
of the batch
buses,
project.
if you have to
Yeah.
add 4 buses, that's an expense of, knowing the numbers from the last 2 years, approximately $140,000 a year.
That's based on the current contract, and
Based on
maybe
the
more
current
than
contract.
that. That's correct.
280,000. I would ask that you put those on a separate listing, separate sheet, so that it can be quite clearly seen as to what's being spent.
That's our intention.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Chip?
Jeff Simons from, I was thinking it was town meeting, I have to say my address, do I?
Okay, Mr. Pasquale.
Yeah. A couple comments. First is I really appreciate this forum. I think this is a great precedent. Hopefully in the future we even expand on this, that even prior to this date, school by school with school councils or parent groups, that we can even have more local involvement with developing budgets. But this is a terrific process, much earlier. I think it's going to get the community much more invested in the process. I think this is terrific. I want to make comments about a couple of kind of pet themes of mine, and there's been a lot of discussion tonight from Chris and others about inclusion, and it seems to be mostly under the point of compliance issues. And I just want to kind of make the point as well to the community that beyond doing the kinds of things that we do for kids with disabilities because we have to, there are lots of other good issues why this should be a very important community issue. Beyond the fact that it's these kids' civil and legal rights to get an education, which it is, to have them educated in their classrooms with their peers reduces social isolation of these students, which can be a real problem. It hopefully will go a long way towards increasing MCAS performance. I haven't seen it broken out in town here, but statewide, MCAS performance is a huge problem for kids with disabilities. College attendance much lower than typical, and unemployment figures for kids that manage to graduate from high school is just abysmal still to this day. So these are all reasons that are important that a community ought to get behind, supporting, educating kids with disabilities through inclusion. But the theme in terms of budget is, I think a point maybe that wasn't made as clearly as it could be tonight, is that the investment in the kind of things that we need to do to make inclusion successful doesn't just make kids with disabilities more successful, it makes everybody more successful. And when, as has been well pointed out, it's extremely difficult for a teacher with a very, very large class to work inclusion effectively. So clearly a strategy for helping to improve results there is to reduce the class size, which of course is going to help all kids. The kind of restructuring that has been done at the high school, and hopefully we'll be looking at that very soon at the middle school, which is beyond just restoring cuts. I mean, it's providing a structure at the school where there are sufficient numbers of teachers and scheduling flexibility where teachers have adequate planning time so that they can consult, teachers can co-teach, can consult with special educators, paraprofessionals, and so forth. That's a fairly major financial commitment beyond just restoring teachers that have been cut in the past and reducing class size, but one that I think would be, again, worth the investment. Training teachers on things from differentiating instruction to how to do modifications, having enough and adequately trained paraprofessionals, perhaps looking, as we've begun to do, but maybe looking at perhaps full-time inclusion facilitator in the district to really get this project launched, and accelerate it. All these kinds of things create the kind of classrooms where all kids do well. When teachers know how to teach kids with differing learning styles and different abilities, all kids benefit from that type of teaching. And that's a huge benefit to every single child in the district. And a little bit to Carol's point, I think Chris answered it pretty well, with regard to the kind of money that we do spend on students that are now placed out of the district. And if I remember my numbers correctly from town meeting, I think our transportation costs and out-of-district tuition costs for kids with disabilities out of our district is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $1.5 million. I think I'm pretty close on that one. That is a boatload of money, which, whether we can bring people back or certainly stem the flow by providing, the kind of class environment where these kids would be educated in the district, how much could $1.5 million do if it was invested inside North Reading in our district? But this is going to require an upfront investment in order to get that money to come back. And some of the things that we're hearing about tonight are those kinds of upfront investments. It might seem like a lot of money now, but I'm certainly convinced that down the road, that if we can keep even a third or a half of that money in town, that's going to do tremendous things to relieve a lot of the problems that we've all been talking about tonight.
Jeff, if I can interrupt you too, that out-of-district cost that you just talked about is for how many students? Isn't that about 20 or 22 students?
It's 16 in private day schools, 4 in residential treatment, and 10 at collaboratives.
That's approximately 30 students that we're talking about $1.5 million for educating and providing transportation.
Yeah, and money that could go a long way towards, again, providing that kind of environment where children and families, feel perhaps that that their best education is going to be right here in North Reading with their peers. The other issue, the other theme that I have is, and I've heard it kind of talked about a little bit here and there, but again, rather than restore, taking it beyond the issue of restoring cuts, is looking at how we as a school system are playing our role in the community as a partner in promoting, partner with families, partner with public safety officials and so forth. But what's our role in promoting the health of our students and reducing at-risk behavior in our students? And some of the things we talked about, getting physical education up to where it ought to be, certainly, it has to be a very, very high priority. Getting as much as we can in the arts in the school, programs with one that I was familiar with at the bachelor school, the type of open circle sort of work with school psychologists, setting up sort of advisor-advisee relationships at the middle school and the high school, guidance, those kinds of things that have been mentioned. Eliminating activity fees. I'm curious to see how, what the result has been of imposing activities fees has been on attendance in these kinds of activities, but I think we should be doing everything we possibly can to expand the number of activities, get kids engaged in school in perhaps non-academic areas, which could end up, leading to better performance in academics. And then something I haven't heard a whole lot about tonight is health education. We're way worse than restoring anything as far as health education. We have got to make a major investment in health education in the district. We are just so far behind. So hopefully these are some of the things that in your priority setting you'll be taking into account.
Just a couple of comments, Jeff. You raised some very good points. And the at-risk behavior and the health issues is something that the school committee has really gotten behind this school year, this calendar year. And we've been trying to respond to what some of the things that we've seen out there, some of the behavior, some of the problems that some of the kids have encountered. And Maureen, if you want to comment, we actually have an at-risk behavior subcommittee of the school committee that we've set up, and we've been making a lot of progress in trying to work out some programs. We've been working very closely with the police department. Maureen, why don't you expand on that?
In the area of at-risk behavior, we have two subcommittees that are ongoing. One is a long-term effort which Dr. Troughton and school psychologists are heading up and the staff. And that's to incorporate more health issues and social issues into the curriculum, to train the staff in a more of an awareness type of approach. And that you'll also see the request for the 9th grade health to be restored. And at the same time, there's a smaller group that's addressing immediate issues. And the momentum for this group, Steve Van Beaver and I are on it. We were saying last night, I have never seen any program in town take off with such a momentum as this program. We have been working very closely and meeting with members from the police force and principals from our middle school and high school. And we have got some short-term programs coming in this year. And we've got the DEAR program restored in the middle school. And we have some other combination of guest speakers, some awareness training, some programs where the police officers will learn to know the kids on first name basis and get familiar with what the kids are addressing. And we're also hoping at the same time to launch some community forums, because we believe that the issues our kids are dealing with don't end at 3 o'clock when they leave the school, that this is something the community needs to embrace along with the education system in town. And so we're hoping to get great participation from community members in addressing the social and at-risk behaviors of our kids.
This is a real priority of the school committee at this point in time, and Maureen and Steve have done an awful lot of work with it. I know a lot of you here probably have kids that haven't reached the middle school or the high school level yet, so you haven't really experienced firsthand some of the problems that we're talking about. But believe me, and I'm not trying to alarm anybody, but there is a significant problem when you get to the middle school and the high school with alcohol and drugs and unsafe sex and things like that. And we recognize that, and I think that we're trying to address it and take some responsibility in getting some information out to the community, getting some information out to the kids. So, David?
Can I just really clarify that? I don't want anyone to walk away with the impression that we have a problem, ongoing problem.
I'm not talking about problems.
It's a community issue with adolescents, and that's what our focus is.
But at the same time, the issues are out there, and I think,
Absolutely.
again, that we as parents and we as school committee members are trying to address that.
Hi, I'm Bob Mealy. I also have a couple multiple questions, but I'll try and keep them as questions.
Sure.
I'd like to get some responses from the panel and the school committee. First of all, Jerry mentioned the class size goals at the elementary level. He mentioned, if I have it correct, K1 and 2 was 20, 3, 4, and 5 is 22. Also, I noted that one of the elementary school principals, I believe it was the batch, stated that you're about 50% of your classes are out of compliance.